The end times has a fascinating cast of characters, some of whom are well known, like the Antichrist. In the book of Revelation, there are 3 women. One is a false church named Babylon, another is the true church, called the Bride of Christ, and the third is Israel. Let's start with Israel. 40 years after the crucifixion of Christ, Rome destroyed Jerusalem and its temple. The defeated Israelis were scattered all over the world. This painting depicts the siege and destruction of Jerusalem in the year 70 A.D. Ezekiel foretold this destruction 600 years ahead of time when he wrote, "And the nations will know that the people of Israel went into exile for their sin, because they were unfaithful to me." The sin was Israel's rejection of Christ. Continuing with this same verse, Ezekiel went on to foretell the suffering the Jewish people would face throughout the centuries. "So I hid my face from them and handed them over to their enemies, and they all fell by the sword." This is the World War II concentration camp Auschwitz. Hitler murdered 6 million Jews in camps like these. But Jews were persecuted long before Hitler. Joseph Stalin of the Soviet Union murdered hundreds of thousands of Jews during a period known as the Great Purge. Following World War II, United Nations Resolution 181 gave Jews the right to return to their ancestral homeland. This map depicts the partition plan that established both Jewish and Palestinian areas within Palestine. Just as Ezekiel foretold Israel's fall in 70 A.D., he also predicted its rebirth, a contemporary Israel. "When I have brought them back from the nations and have gathered them from the countries of their enemies, I will show myself holy through them in the sight of many nations." Here is God's purpose in restoring Israel. "They will look on me, the one they have pierced, and they will mourn for him, as one mourns for an only child, and grieve bitterly for him, as one grieves for a firstborn son." At some future date, during the final days before Christ's return to earth, all of Israel will understand and accept that Jesus, Yeshua, is the Messiah they have longed for millenniums. The Apostle Paul wrote, "And in this way all Israel will be saved." Next, we consider the Roman Empire. Both Israel and the Roman Empire were on the world stage during the first century at the time of Christ. Now both are returning. Daniel foretold that the people of the ruler who will come will destroy the city and the sanctuary. Because this prophecy was fulfilled in 70 A.D., we can now see the identity of the people who would destroy the city of Jerusalem and the sanctuary, which is its temple. The people consisted of an army from the Roman Empire. So plugging that information into this puzzle, we can see that the citizens of a future Roman Empire are the people of the ruler who is to come, that ruler being the Antichrist. If you didn't follow all of that, just know that the Antichrist will one day rule over Europe. A contemporary Roman Empire began to take shape on March 25, 1957, when the Treaty of Rome established the European Economic Community, the forerunner of the European Union. Remember that the prophet Daniel had foretold that the final empire would be a Roman Empire. The signing ceremony for this Treaty of Rome was at the City Hall building in Rome. After this group of 6 nations grew into the European Union, national leaders once again assembled at Rome's City Hall building to sign its constitution. You see, Rome is to Europe as Philadelphia is to the United States. Philadelphia is where both the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution were signed. Philadelphia was the largest city in the United States and its capital at the time, but there wasn't any reason that the European founding document and its constitution should be signed in Rome, well, except to fulfill Bible prophecy. This brings us to the point of introducing the primary beast of Revelation, the beast out of the sea, a contemporary Roman Empire. The critical time for this beast is the initial 42 months of the 7-year end time period, when the Antichrist becomes its ruler. The beast was given a mouth to utter proud words and blasphemies and to exercise its authority for 42 months. After the initial 42 months, which is the halfway point through the final 7 years, Antichrist's endeavors will focus on Jerusalem, where he will go to the Temple Mount and proclaim that he is God. He will oppose and will exalt himself over everything that is called God or is worshipped, so that he sets himself up in God's temple, proclaiming himself to be God. In claiming to be God, the Antichrist will be claiming absolute authority over the entire world. Now for a look at the secondary beast in Revelation, called the beast out of the earth. Its purpose is to support the primary, the European beast out of the sea. Concerning the secondary beast, it ordered them to set up an image in honor of the beast who was wounded by the sword and yet lived. This refers to an image honoring the primary, the European beast. Religious images can be very powerful. On a mountain overlooking Rio de Janeiro is a 98-foot-high statue called Christ the Redeemer. Its presence tells the generations that follow exactly what those who put this imposing statue in place, what they believed. But the image of the beast will be exponentially more powerful. Also, the second beast was given power to give breath to the image of the first beast so that the image could speak and cause all who refused to worship the image to be killed. For the image to be able to speak and determine who was worshiping and who was not could result from a supernatural ability, or this might be accomplished through artificial intelligence. This beast, it also forced all people, great and small, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hands or on their foreheads so that they could not buy or sell unless they had the mark. Technology to make this happen has been around for some time. This is a depiction of the two beasts, the first beast being the Antichrist ruling over a contemporary Roman Empire. We can speculate about the identity of the second beast. Many say he is a religious leader. The associated leader is called the false prophet. But anyone who says, God chose me to lead you to safety and then leads people to destruction is a false prophet. I tend to think that, like the first beast, it is a political leader in the nations he rules. Next is Babylon, a worldwide megachurch. The origins of her pagan practices go all the way back to ancient Babylon. Since Babylon claims to be a faithful Christian church, her unfaithfulness is likened to that of a prostitute. Concerning Babylon, the book of Revelation says, "The woman was dressed in purple and scarlet, and was glittering with gold, precious stones, and pearls. She held a golden cup in her hand filled with abominable things and the filth of her adulteries." Now Babylon holds a golden cup in her hand, and inside that chalice is the filth of her adulteries. In other words, Babylon worships the contents of its chalice instead of worshiping God. Babylon is located on 7 hills. The city of 7 hills is Rome. Revelation states, the 7 heads are 7 hills on which the woman sits. Rome has been called an eternal city. This is a vintage postcard with Rome's eternal city claim clearly stated. Rome represents the false king, the Antichrist, and the false high priest. In contrast, the New Jerusalem is the eternal city where God will one day reside with his people. The next video is a deep look into the European Union and how it is being transformed into the beast out of the sea. How long will it be until the Antichrist appears? Agree or disagree, I value your comments, and please click like or subscribe. Thank you for listening.